hourglass of time, looking through different stages to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So much to choose, so many directions to take. One must focus, like following the headlights of a car on a dark road. Look adversity straight in the eyes, for hope abounds. Through an hourglass, it slowly sifts along. As you go through your life, one day at a time, one moment at a time, staying in the present. Excerpt from Chapter 10, The Process. My Italian Therapy, written and narrated by Gina Fiore.
I have a very simple job I need to do is I need to take that lock off and replace it with a new one because it broke. How hard could that be? It's like one of the least of my concerns. My next concern is putting this lock on the outside of this 9-foot door so I have a deadbolt. They have the skeleton keys in most of these doors in this house, so that's next. Okay, so now that I cut out the spot that I need to do to be able to put the lock on, now there's a template where you put that on the other side of the door, and that's where the hole needs to be. So I will drill out the hole, and basically on the other side, that's exactly where the lock will be. So that's how you work it. You use the template, you drill the hole for this on the other side with this, which I will put on the end of my drill. Fun time! God, I love doing this stuff, especially when it all fits together. Did I get it? So now we need to see if this is going to work, because I've already drilled that hole. I already drilled the hole. So let's see. Yay! It fits. This is the first hole I have ever drilled in an existing historic door and put my own lock in. I've changed hundreds of locks over the years, but with existing holes. So these doors, all the interior doors, they didn't have locks, and the ones that did had skeleton keys in them. So John Vaught drilled all the holes in the doors because we didn't use this type of lock. We used a regular deadbolt, and it went into the wall. This has to attach to the other side of the door, so I thought it would be best to use something like this. He had to chisel holes into the door frame. This one just requires a hole in the door, and then we put in the other piece, which goes, you know, kind of like this. So on this side, we have this piece. Over here, we've got the deadbolt part, and then the door lock goes into this, and so it doesn't require being chiseled out into the door frame, because basically it's attaching to the other door, since these are double doors, and this was the only solution I could think that was rational that I could do. So I'm happy about it. And then on the other side, this little piece I put in, and then I put the little screws through and tighten them. So let's do this. Let's put the lock in. I'm so excited. Let's do this. I have all my tools, everything I need to be able to put this lock in. So here we go. Can do this. Well, the only thing I have to do is get a gold screw that's a little longer than the ones that I have in there on that side. But look, it fits. It works. Yay! I have to trim off the top of the door, but so it doesn't stick. But other than that, it works. It works. Drop the key. Okay. Let's see. There we go. Oh, the key doesn't fit. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Yay! Yay! It works. It works. Can't complain about that. So good morning, good morning. Actually, it's the second half of the morning. We are going to go ahead and clean up this planter box area. We're going to put the rest of the sticks across the back on these last two planter boxes. We're going to cut back the herbs. We're going to plant some garlic in these 3 planter boxes. My concern is, I think there was like some kind of little bug or something on this heirloom artichoke, so I'm going to go ahead and just throw it away and not use the soil, or remove all of the soil and clean the box before I use it again. So I'm just going to pull them all out and throw them in a trash bag. We're going to pull up the beans because I think they're done producing, and plant garlic in these 2 boxes and this box, and we'll contend with this next year. I'm going to put some, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, honestly. So let's get started. Well, honestly, I wasn't quite sure what I was doing. All I know is I just wanted no weeds and something to put around the little water feature. So I'm going to put gravel on top of all that shale, gravel or river rock. But at least it's a little bit cleaned up. The cinder blocks are all even and level somewhat. And I'll finish it up Thursday maybe. Take some of that gravel over there and put it on top, and then in the river rocks, better than it was. So we are layering. I'm using the river rock I had, the gravel I had, and just covering up the plastic, making it look neater. There's a lot of work that still has to be done, but I'll set the bricks on the top of the cinder blocks and the stones until I can get more river rock and cement those bricks in, etc. It'll look better.